At 2 in the morning, my 18-year-old daughter called us crying from her boyfriend's empty house after lying about a sleepover. The next day, I found the secret phone his mother had been using to coach her. Turn off your location before you leave. I used to think the hardest part of raising a daughter would be the teenage years, the eye rolls, the slammed doors, the arguments over curfew and crop tops, and whether homework was basically done when it absolutely was not. But I was wrong. The hardest part came when my daughter turned 18 and suddenly stood in the doorway between childhood and adulthood, with one foot still in our home and the other already walking away from us. Her name is Emily, and for most of her life, she was the kind of daughter people complimented me on. "She's so polite," teachers would say. "She's got such a good head on her shoulders. She's going places," and she was. Emily worked hard all through high school. Honors classes, volunteer hours, late nights at the kitchen table with flashcards spread out like playing cards. She missed football games to study for app exams. She cried over math tests and college essays, then got up the next morning and tried again. When she got accepted into her dream school, a small but highly competitive university in North Carolina, my husband Mark and I cried harder than she did. I remember standing in the kitchen while she opened the email on her laptop. The dishwasher was humming. Our golden retriever, Murphy, was asleep under the table. Emily's hand was shaking on the mouse. She stared at the screen for 3 full seconds, then covered her mouth with both hands. "I got in," she whispered. Mark shouted so loud Murphy jumped up and started barking. I wrapped my arms around her, and for a moment, I could feel the little girl she used to be. The one who climbed into our bed during thunderstorms, the one who asked me to braid her hair before school, the one who believed I could fix anything with a Band-Aid and a kiss on the forehead. That night, we went out for burgers and milkshakes, just the 3 of us. Emily was glowing. "This is it," she said, smiling down at her fries. "This is everything I worked for," and I thought, naively, that the months before she left would be precious. I imagined family dinners, shopping for dorm supplies, long talks in the car, maybe a few evenings on the porch where she'd ask me what college was really like, and I'd tell her about my own nervous, messy beginning in the world. I thought we would soak up every last moment before she left home. Instead, we barely saw her. For the past 2 years, Emily had spent almost all her free time with her boyfriend, Tyler Whitaker. Tyler was 17 when they started dating, 18 now. He was handsome in that clean-cut, confident way that made adults trust him too quickly. Tall, athletic, polite when he needed to be. He played competitive tennis, wore quarter-zip pullovers, and always seemed freshly showered, even in July. His parents, Greg and Melissa Whitaker, lived about 15 minutes away in a big brick house on a quiet cul-de-sac. They had a pool in the backyard, a home gym in the basement, and a garage refrigerator stocked with sparkling water and protein shakes. They were the kind of parents who said things like, "We just want the kids to be happy," which sounds warm and generous until you realize they mean their kid. At first, I was glad Emily had found someone who made her happy. Tyler came to dinner a few times. He shook Mark's hand. He called me Mrs. Harrison until I told him Susan was fine. He laughed at Emily's jokes and looked at her like she was the only person in the room. I wanted to like him, and in some ways, I did. But as months passed, Emily's world shrank until there were only 2 people in it, Emily and Tyler. She stopped watching movies with us on Friday nights. She missed Sunday breakfast. She skipped her little cousin's birthday party because Tyler needed her. She spent holidays texting under the table, smiling at her phone while my mother tried to ask her about school. When she was home, she wasn't really home. She was waiting to leave. Mark noticed it first. One Saturday morning, he stood at the kitchen window, watching Emily back out of the driveway in the old Honda we let her use. "She's gone again?" he asked. I sighed. "Tyler's house. She was there last night." "I know." He didn't say anything for a minute. Then, quietly, he said, "We're losing her before she's even left." That sentence stayed with me. Because it was true. We tried talking to her. Not once. Many times. "Honey," I said one evening while she stood in the laundry room looking for her jeans, "we're happy you have Tyler, but we'd like to see you, too. You leave for college in 2 months. I know, Mom." "Do you?" She looked up, impatient. "What does that mean?" "It means your dad and I miss you." Her face softened for half a second, but then her phone buzzed. "I'm not gone forever," she said. "I'm literally just going to Tyler's, but that was the problem. She was always just going to Tyler's, and every time we asked for a little more time, she acted like we were asking her to give up love itself. Then came the Friday night that cracked everything open. It was nearly 10 o'clock when Emily came downstairs wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair still damp from the shower. "Hey," she said, casual in that practiced way teenagers use when they already know the answer might be no. "Can I sleep over at Kayla's tonight?" I looked up from the book I wasn't really reading. "Tonight? Yeah!" Mark muted the baseball game. "It's 10 o'clock. I know, but Kayla's having a rough night. Her parents are fighting again." Kayla was a real friend. We knew her. We liked her. But something in Emily's voice was too smooth, too quick. "Why didn't you mention this earlier?" I asked. "She just texted me." Mark and I exchanged a glance. "I'm sorry," I said. "Not tonight. It's too last minute." Emily's expression hardened immediately. "Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm 18. "And you still live here," Mark said, keeping his voice calm. "You use our car. You're on our phone plan. We're not saying you can never stay at a friend's house. We're saying we need more notice." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is ridiculous." "Emily," I said, "we're not trying to control you. We're trying to have basic expectations." "Basic expectations," she repeated, like the words tasted bitter. Then she went upstairs. I heard her bedroom door close. Not slam, exactly, but hard enough to make a point. For about 20 minutes, the house was quiet. Then Mark looked at his phone. Her location's off. I felt my stomach drop. Emily had always shared her location with us. Not because we wanted to spy on her every move, but because she was a young woman driving alone at night in a world that didn't always treat young women kindly. I texted her. "Why is your location off?" No answer, I called. Straight to voicemail. Mark stood up. "I'm going to check the driveway." The Honda was still there. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. At 11:37, Emily texted, "I'm fine. Stop freaking out." That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just enough information to keep us from calling the police, not enough to rebuild any trust. The next day, she came home around noon. A friend had picked her up, she said. She'd gone to Kayla's after all. I knew she was lying. Not because I had proof, because I'm her mother. There is a particular look your child gets when they are hiding something from you. It's not always fear. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes it's defiance. Sometimes it's a strange, unfamiliar coldness that makes you wonder when exactly your sweet child learned to look you in the eye and tell you a story with a straight face. We told her we needed to talk. She said she was tired. We told her we would talk the next day. She said fine, but the next night, she didn't come home. She told us she was having dinner with Tyler's family. Around midnight, I texted her. "Are you coming home?" No answer. At 1:15, Mark called. No answer. At 2:04 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was small. "Mom?" I sat up so fast my heart started pounding. "What's wrong?" "Can you and Dad come get me?" "Where are you?" A pause. Tyler's, Mark was already pulling on jeans. When we pulled up to the Whitakers' house, every light downstairs was on. Emily was sitting on the front steps with her arms wrapped around herself. Tyler stood near the garage, looking angry and embarrassed. And in the driveway, still unloading suitcases from the back of a black SUV, were Greg and Melissa Whitaker. They had just come home from the airport. They had no idea my daughter had been staying in their house. Melissa looked stunned when she saw us. "Susan," she said, forcing a smile that trembled at the edges. "Mark, we're so sorry. We just got back from Denver. We didn't know." Greg cut in. "We thought Tyler was staying with friends." I looked at Tyler. He stared at the ground. Emily wouldn't look at anyone. The whole scene was absurd. 4 adults standing in a driveway at 2 in the morning, surrounded by luggage and lies, pretending this was just an awkward misunderstanding instead of a complete collapse of trust. Mark opened the back door of our car. "Emily," he said. She got in without a word. The ride home was silent. Not peaceful silence. The kind that sits heavy in the car, filling every inch of space. When we got home, I wanted to yell. I wanted to ask every question at once. I wanted to demand to know who she thought she was and how long she'd been lying and why she thought we deserved this. But she looked exhausted. So did we. Mark said, "Go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." She nodded and disappeared upstairs. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room until dawn, watching the sky turn gray behind the curtains, wondering how we had gone from college acceptance letters and milkshakes to sneaking around and 2 a.m. rescue calls. The next morning, I went upstairs with a basket of folded laundry. Emily was asleep, curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek like she used to do when she was little. For one painful second, all I saw was my baby. Then I set her clean clothes on the chair by her desk and noticed her backpack on the floor. It was open, stuffed with a hoodie, a hairbrush, loose receipts, and a water bottle. I bent down to move it out of the walkway, and something slid from a side pocket. A phone. Not her phone. A small black phone in a cheap clear case. At first, I thought maybe it belonged to Kayla, or Tyler, or maybe Emily had borrowed it. But when I touched the screen, it lit up. The lock screen was a photo of Emily and Tyler at the lake, his arms wrapped around her waist. My breath caught. I knew I shouldn't look. I also knew my daughter had turned off her location, lied about where she was, vanished overnight, and called us crying at 2 in the morning from a house where no parents were home. So I did look. The phone wasn't locked, and what I found made my hands go cold. There were messages from Tyler, dozens of them. But the ones that made me sit down right there on the edge of Emily's bed were from Melissa Whitaker, a grown woman, a mother, texting my daughter like a strategist in a war against us. "Don't tell them until you're already on your way. They can't really stop you if you're 18. Turn off your location before you leave, sweetheart. It only gives them more ways to interfere. If they ask, say Kayla needs you. Keep it simple. Remember, I'm 18, repeat that. You don't owe them every detail. Tyler is in a very fragile place. He needs reassurance that you're choosing him." My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I scrolled further. There were messages about the night before. Messages about how Tyler's parents would be out of town, but it would be good for you two to have quiet time before college changes everything. There were messages telling Emily how to get a ride so we wouldn't see the Honda missing. I sat there in my daughter's room, holding a secret phone another parent had bought her, reading instructions on how to lie to me. It felt like being robbed in my own home. Not of money, of trust, of authority, of the belief that the other adults around my child would at least pretend to respect her family. Emily stirred. "Mom?" she mumbled. I turned around slowly. She saw the phone in my hand, and all the color drained from her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Where did you get that?" "It fell out of your backpack." Her eyes filled immediately. "Mom, did Tyler buy this for you?" She looked down. That was answer enough. I stood, because if I stayed sitting, I was afraid I would fall apart. "Get dressed," I said, my voice shaking. "We're talking downstairs." Now, when Mark saw the phone, I watched anger move through him like a storm cloud. He didn't yell. Mark almost never yelled. That was how I knew he was furious. Emily sat across from us at the kitchen table, pale and trembling, while the little black phone lay between us like evidence in a courtroom. Mark tapped the screen. "Tyler bought this?" Emily nodded. "When?" "A few weeks ago." "Why?" She wiped her face with her sleeve. So we could talk if you took my phone. We have never taken your phone, I said. I know, Mark's jaw tightened. And Melissa knew about it? Emily hesitated. Emily! Yes! I pushed the phone gently toward her. Did she write these messages? Emily looked at the screen and burst into tears. Not the angry tears we had seen before. These were different. These came from somewhere deep and exhausted. I didn't know how to stop, she sobbed. I moved toward her instinctively, then stopped myself, because part of me wanted to comfort her, and part of me wanted to shake the truth out of her. What does that mean? I asked. She covered her face. Tyler keeps saying I'm leaving him. He says everyone leaves him. He says if I really loved him, I wouldn't just go 3 hours away and start a whole new life without him. Mark leaned forward. Emily, going to college is not leaving someone. It's growing up. She shook her head. You don't understand. He's been begging me to defer. The room went still. Defer, I said. For a semester, she whispered. Just until he figures things out. Mark stared at her. What things? Tennis. His community college classes. His mental health. Us. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Emily, I said carefully. Were you considering that? She cried harder. I don't know. Those 3 words nearly broke me. Not because they were cruel, because they were honest. She looked at us, mascara smudged under her eyes, suddenly looking younger than 18 and older than she should have. Melissa printed the forms, she said. What forms? Mark asked. The deferral request forms from the college website. Her voice shook. She said it didn't mean I was giving it up forever. Just postponing. She said if I left now, it would destroy Tyler. She said he'd never recover if I proved school mattered more than love. I gripped the edge of the table. There are moments in motherhood when your fear becomes rage so quickly you barely recognize it. This was one of them, because my daughter was not emotional support luggage. She was not a therapy animal. She was not a bandage to wrap around someone else's wounds. She was a young woman who had worked her whole life for a future that was finally opening in front of her. And another family had printed forms to close that door. Mark stood up and walked to the window. He put both hands on his hips and stared into the backyard for a long moment. When he turned around, his voice was low. Where are the forms? Emily whispered. In Tyler's car. I closed my eyes. I wanted to call Melissa right then. I wanted to ask what kind of woman coaches another person's daughter to lie. I wanted to ask how she would feel if I bought Tyler a secret phone and told him how to manipulate her. But this wasn't about Melissa. Not yet. This was about Emily. I reached across the table and took my daughter's hand. She let me. Sweetheart, I said, love doesn't ask you to make yourself smaller so someone else can feel safe, she cried quietly. Mark came back to the table and sat down. We love you, he said. That hasn't changed. But what happened these past few nights can't happen again. The lying, the secret phone, turning off your location, staying in that house without his parents knowing. And now this? I know, she whispered. Do you? I asked, and my voice cracked. Because I don't think you understand how scared we've been. She looked at the table. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. Part of me also knew sorry would not be enough. That afternoon, Mark called Greg Whitaker. I heard only Mark's side of the conversation, but that was enough. No, Greg, this is not a misunderstanding. Pause. Yes, we found the phone. Pause. Because your son bought it for our daughter so she could communicate behind our backs. Pause. And your wife texted her instructions on how to lie to us. Another pause, longer this time. Mark's voice hardened. Then I suggest you ask Melissa. By the time he hung up, his face looked gray. What did he say? I asked. He said Tyler's under a lot of pressure. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Mark looked at me. I told him Emily is not responsible for keeping Tyler upright. Later that evening, Melissa texted me. Susan, I'm so sorry you feel blindsided. My intention was only to support the kids. Tyler has been in such a dark place. I hope, mother to mother, You can understand wanting to protect your child. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, Mother to mother, I understand wanting to protect your child. What I do not understand is teaching mine to lie so yours can feel better. She didn't respond. The next morning, another message came in from Melissa, cheerful as a Christmas card. Hi, Susan. Hope things have calmed down. Greg and I wanted to ask if Emily can come with us to Miami next week for Tyler's tennis tournament. We'll cover the hotel and meals. It would mean a lot to Tyler to have her there. Let us know. I read it twice. Then a third time. Something about the exclamation points made my skin prickle. I showed Mark. He frowned. Miami? A few hours later, through a slip from Emily herself, we found out the truth. The Whitakers had already bought her plane ticket. Before asking us. Before knowing whether we were comfortable. Before considering that she still lived under our roof, that we were still paying her bills, that we were still trying to hold our family together after a major breach of trust. They had made the decision first, then asked permission as a courtesy. That evening, we told Emily. She stood in the kitchen while I stirred a pot of spaghetti sauce no one was going to eat. You're not going to Miami, Mark said. Her face went blank. What? We're not comfortable with it, I said. Not after everything that's happened. They already bought the ticket. That was their mistake, Mark said. She stared at him like he'd slapped her. You can't do this, I turned off the stove. Emily, we're not punishing you for having a boyfriend. We are responding to broken trust. I'm 18, she said. There it was, the phrase that had become a wall between us. Mark nodded slowly. Yes, you are. And because you're 18, you're allowed to make adult choices. But adult choices come with adult consequences. She narrowed her eyes. Meaning? Meaning if you want complete independence, we need to talk about what that actually looks like. Your car, your phone, your living expenses, college costs. We are happy to support you as our daughter. But we will not bankroll a lifestyle where our boundaries are ignored and we are treated like obstacles. Her eyes filled with tears. So now you're threatening to take college away from me? My heart twisted. No, I said quickly. We are not taking college away from you. Then what are you saying? I'm saying we need to know there is still respect in this relationship. She wiped at her cheek angrily. You just don't like Tyler. That is not true. It is. No, I said. What I don't like is watching you disappear into someone else's life. What I don't like is being lied to. What I don't like is another family making plans for you like your own family doesn't exist. And what I absolutely will not accept is anyone convincing you to give up the future you worked for because their son is sad. She flinched. Tyler needs me. And we need you, too, I whispered. But more than that, you need you. The kitchen went quiet. Only the clock above the pantry ticked. Emily's shoulders dropped, just a little. Then she said, You don't understand. Maybe she was right. Maybe no parent ever fully understands the private world their child builds outside the home. Maybe there are parts of our children we only get to know after they've already left us. But I knew enough. I knew my daughter was standing at the edge of her future, and instead of running toward it with excitement, she was being pulled backward by guilt. I knew Tyler's sadness had become her responsibility. I knew the Whitakers, maybe without meaning to, were treating Emily's dreams like a threat to their son's comfort. And I knew if Mark and I didn't draw a line now, there might not be a line left to draw. So we held firm. Emily didn't go to Miami. For 3 days, she barely spoke to us. She stayed in her room. She cried. She texted constantly. She ate cereal for dinner and ignored the plate I left outside her door. Tyler called the house once. Mark answered. I could hear Tyler's voice from the hallway, sharp with frustration. With all due respect, sir, this is between me and Emily. Mark's reply was calm. No, Tyler. When my daughter is living in my home, lying to us, being given secret phones, and being pressured to travel across the country after a major breach of trust, it's not just between you and Emily. Tyler said something I couldn't hear. Then Mark said, if you care about her, you'll want her to leave for college with peace, not guilt. After he hung up, Mark stood in the kitchen with his hand still on the phone. "He didn't like that," he said. "No," I replied. "I imagine he didn't." The Miami trip came and went. Tyler lost in the semifinals. Emily found out through Instagram. She cried again that night. But something shifted afterward. Not all at once. There was no dramatic apology, no movie scene reconciliation in the rain. Real families don't usually heal that way. It happened in small moments. Emily came downstairs one morning and asked if I wanted coffee from Starbucks. Mark and I looked at each other like we'd witnessed a miracle. A few days later, she sat with us through an entire dinner without checking her phone. Then one evening, she knocked on our bedroom door. I was folding laundry on the bed. Mark was reading beside me. "Can I talk to you guys?" she asked. She looked younger than 18 in that moment. She sat at the foot of the bed, twisting a ring around her finger. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were quiet, but they landed with the weight of something real. "I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry about the phone. I'm sorry I left while we were talking. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter." My eyes filled immediately. Mark took off his glasses. Emily looked down at her hands. "I think I was scared." "Of what?" I asked. She swallowed. "Of leaving. Of changing. Of Tyler hating me for going. He keeps saying he's happy for me, but then he gets sad and quiet, and I feel like I'm hurting him just by wanting what I want." Oh, my girl. There it was. Not rebellion. Not cruelty. Fear. Guilt. The terrible, tender confusion of being young and loved in a way that feels too heavy. I moved beside her on the bed. "Emily," I said, "someone can be sad to lose daily access to you and still love you enough to let you grow." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And if they can't?" Mark asked gently. She looked at him. He continued, "Then you need to pay attention to that." For a long time, no one spoke. Then Emily leaned into me, and I held her the way I had when she was little. Not because she was a child, but because even adults need somewhere safe to fall apart. The weeks before college weren't perfect. Tyler was still around, though less often. The Whitakers kept their distance after Mark had a very direct conversation with Greg about boundaries and respect. The secret phone went into Mark's desk drawer. Emily gave it to us herself. The deferral forms never made it into our house. Emily and Tyler had hard conversations of their own. Some ended in tears, some ended in silence. Some ended with Emily sitting on the porch long after dark, staring at the street like she was watching two versions of her life drive in opposite directions. But slowly, she began making choices that belonged to her again. She went to her college orientation Zoom. She had lunch with her grandmother. She met Kayla for ice cream and came home laughing. She helped me shop for twin XL sheets, a shower caddy, a desk lamp, and far too many throw pillows. One night, she and Mark stayed up late, assembling a small bookshelf for her dorm room. I stood in the hallway, listening to them argue over the instructions. "Dad, that piece is backward." "It is not backward. The picture literally shows the holes on the other side." "Well, maybe the picture is wrong." I had to cover my mouth to keep from crying, because it sounded like us again. A family. Messy, imperfect, still bruised. But a family. The morning we drove Emily to college, the car was packed so full she had a duffel bag on her lap. Tyler came by before we left. He gave her flowers and hugged her in the driveway. They whispered to each other for a long time. I watched from the porch, arms crossed, trying not to interfere. I didn't know what would happen to them. Maybe they would survive the distance. Maybe they wouldn't. But when Emily got into our car, she was crying and smiling at the same time. As we pulled away, she reached back and took my hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. I squeezed her fingers. "I know. What if I mess it up?" "You will," Mark said from the driver's seat. Emily laughed through her tears. "Thanks, Dad," he smiled at her in the rearview mirror. "You'll mess some things up. Then you'll learn. Then you'll keep going. That's how adulthood works." She looked out the window as our neighborhood disappeared behind us. After a while, she said, "Thank you for not letting me go to Miami." I turned to her, surprised. She kept her eyes on the road ahead. "I hated you for it at the time," she said. "But I think if I had gone, I would have felt like I was choosing his life over mine." My throat tightened. "You don't have to thank us for loving you," she nodded. "But I do." When we arrived on campus, the place was buzzing with parents unloading cars and freshmen pretending not to be terrified. Emily's dorm room was on the 3rd floor, with no elevator, because life has a sense of humor. We carried boxes. We made the bed. We plugged in the lamp. I lined up her toiletries on the tiny dresser, then realized I was stalling. The room smelled like fresh paint, cardboard, and nervous possibility. Across the hall, a girl from Ohio was crying while her father pretended not to notice. Somewhere downstairs, a resident assistant was yelling directions through a megaphone. Emily stood in the middle of her room, surrounded by all the pieces of the girl she had been and the woman she was becoming. Mark hugged her first. His eyes were wet when he pulled away. "Call your mother," he said. Emily laughed. "I will." Then she turned to me. For a second, I saw every version of her at once. The baby I rocked at 3 a.m., the kindergartner with a backpack bigger than her body. The teenager slamming doors. The young woman brave enough to admit she was scared. I hugged her hard. "Go live your life," I whispered. She held on tighter. "I love you, Mom. I love you more." And then, just as we were about to leave, there was a knock on the open door. Emily turned. Tyler stood in the hallway. For a moment, nobody moved. He was breathing hard, like he'd run across campus. His hair was messy. His eyes were red. In one hand, he held a folded stack of papers. I knew what they were before he said a word. The deferral forms. "Tyler," Emily said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" He stepped into the room and looked around at the made bed, the desk lamp, the string lights, the little framed photo of Emily and Murphy she'd placed by the window. His face tightened. "So this is it?" he said. "You're really doing this?" Mark moved slightly, just enough to stand beside me. Emily glanced at us, then back at Tyler. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm staying." Tyler laughed under his breath. "Unbelievable, Tyler." "No, I drove 3 hours because I needed to hear you say it." He held up the papers. "You still have time. We can go home tonight. You can defer. 1 semester. That's all I'm asking." My body went cold. Emily stared at the forms. "Tyler, we talked about this." "No, you talked. Your parents talked. Everybody decided what's best for you except the person who supposedly loves you." Mark's voice was firm. "Careful." Tyler ignored him. He looked only at Emily. "If you stay here tonight, we're done." The room seemed to shrink around us. The noise from the hallway faded. The laughter, the carts rolling, the parents calling out to one another. It all disappeared beneath the weight of that sentence. Emily's face crumpled. "Don't do that," she whispered. "I'm serious," Tyler said. "I can't sit at home wondering what you're doing, who you're with, while you build some new life that doesn't include me. If you love me, come home with me." His voice broke on the last sentence, and for one dangerous second, I saw Emily soften. I saw the old pull, the guilt, the ache, the instinct to rescue him from his own pain. She looked at the papers in his hand, then at her bed, then at the campus map taped crookedly above her desk, then at Mark and me. I wanted to tell her what to do. Every bone in my body screamed to step between them, to take those forms, to throw them in the trash, to tell Tyler to leave my daughter alone. But I didn't, because this was the line. Not ours, hers. Emily wiped her cheeks with both hands. When she spoke, her voice trembled, but it did not break. "I do love you," she said. Tyler's shoulders dropped slightly, like he thought he had won. Then Emily took a breath. "But I'm not going home." The words hung there. Tyler stared at her. "What?" I'm not deferring. I'm not leaving. I worked too hard to get here. His expression changed from shock to anger so quickly it startled me. So that's it? School matters more than us? Emily shook her head. No, I matter, too. Tyler looked like he didn't know what to do with that. She stepped closer, tears running freely now. I have spent months feeling like loving you meant proving I would give up anything. My time, my parents, my plans, my future. Her voice grew stronger. That's not love, Tyler. That's fear. He looked at the floor. If you walk away from me right now, she said, that's your choice. But I'm not going to make myself smaller so you don't have to be scared. Tyler's jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he might apologize. I prayed he would. Instead, he dropped the deferral forms on her desk. Fine, he said. Good luck with your new life. Then he walked out. Emily stood completely still until his footsteps disappeared down the hall. Then she folded in on herself. Mark caught her first, and I wrapped my arms around both of them. She sobbed so hard I felt it in my ribs. I thought he loved me, she cried. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered into her hair. He may have, but love that can only survive if you stay small was never going to be enough. We stayed with her another hour, maybe 2. Time felt strange after that, Emily cried. Then she drank water. Then she sat on the edge of the bed while Mark quietly picked up the deferral forms, tore them in half, and placed them in the trash. She watched him do it. Then she nodded. When it was finally time to go, she walked us to the parking lot. The sun was starting to drop behind the oak trees, casting long golden stripes across the campus lawn. Students moved past us in clusters, carrying pillows and laptops and all the fragile hope of a new beginning. Emily hugged Mark. Then she hugged me. This time, she didn't cling like a little girl. She held on like someone saying goodbye to one chapter so she could begin the next. I'm going to be okay, she said, as if she was trying the words out. Yes, I said. You are. Mark kissed her forehead. Call us tonight. I will. And tomorrow, I added. She smiled through swollen eyes. I will, Mark, and I got into the car. The passenger seat was empty. The back seat was empty. The whole car felt too quiet. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I looked back. Emily was still standing there. Then, slowly, she turned toward campus, toward the dorm, toward the life she had earned. My phone buzzed before we reached the highway. A text from Emily. Thank you for being my parents even when I made it hard. I'm sorry. I'm scared, but I'm staying. I'm going to be okay. I read it aloud to Mark. He pulled over on the shoulder of the road. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he put his head down on the steering wheel, and I covered my face with my hands. We sat there, 2 exhausted parents in a half-empty car, crying like people who had lost something and saved something at the same time. Because that's what parenting is, sometimes. It's knowing when to hold on. It's knowing when to let go. And, hardest of all, it's knowing when love has to become a boundary before it can become a bridge. Emily didn't become an adult the day she turned 18. And we didn't stop being her parents that day either. We were all learning. Slowly, painfully, together. That summer before she left, I learned something I will carry for the rest of my life. You can love your child with your whole heart and still tell them no. Sometimes, that no is the thing that brings them home. And sometimes, it's the thing that gives them the courage to leave.